Excellent. Forest a little bit slippery on that, but just an excellent ride. And really, really fun to have a good tussle with someone. It's nice.
100. All the big guns were out in force in the special and production classes at the Pajero Sugarbelt 400. Apart from Pajero, this season sees factory-supported teams from the likes of Toyota, Nissan and Colt, and winning on the national circuit is now more important than ever. After 2 successive wins for Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer, the Pajero camp were hoping for a hat-trick in round 3 of the series and were full of confidence. For reigning production vehicle champions Arpi Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser, the competition has never been tougher. Also back in harness this year is former champion Hannes Grobler from the Nissan stable, with rally driver Enzo Kuhn spearheading the Colt Challenge, with mentor Sorrel van der Merwe sharing the SALive.com Jeep Cherokee with Arthur Abraham. Going into the 400, Class A in the special vehicle class was led by Shamir Variawa and experienced former champion Bucks Carolyn in the Cornbake Jimco. Variawa and Carolyn were just 3 points clear of Henry Kirstein and Renier Juster, with John Weir-Smith and Jeff Bennett third in the Dark Dog Raceco. While Variawa and Carolyn were looking for a rich haul of points from the KwaZulu-Natal outing, Class B leader Giel Nel was adopting a somewhat cautious approach.
The sugarcane and the forest, they both, as far as I'm concerned, very dangerous, and you've got to be very cautious. You can't see far ahead, and you've got like 300, 600 meters to go, and then you've got to turn 90 left or right. And you can't really hook 4th or 5th gear. You've got to be very cautious.
After 2 wins, Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer predictably led Class T in the production vehicle category. Top of the pile in Class D were Piet Haasbroek and Christo Bosch in a Toyota Land Cruiser, with Philip Buerter and Guillaume Knijp leading Class E in a Toyota Hilux, with Buerter a little surprised at the status quo.
Actually, it's a surprise to me that I'm leading this race so far, because I wasn't expecting it. Well, I don't know what to say. I'm just going to try my best.
There's a peculiar law in off-road racing that dictates events must get underway while most sane people are still warmly tucked in bed. The sun had not yet risen when competitors were attending a driver's briefing where clerk of the course, Rex Borum, was detailing changes to the route. And while he was running through his notes, pre-race favourite Neil Woolrich was preaching caution out on the route, while Atang Makhakaneni, partnering Bevan Berthold in the Speedstick Raceco, was predicting a win.
The idea of today is just to make sure that you keep it on the track. I think you go off the track, you're going to lose a lot of time. So I think a lot of concentration, especially on the first lap of the first loop, because it'll be virgin ground. Yeah, just a lot of concentration.
We have a very fit car. Hopefully me and my driver are fit, and we should do well today. We've been unfortunate the past few races, and this time around we'll do it.
The clerk of the course was back in action, orchestrating the start, with Shamir Variawa and Bucks Carolyn setting off after time trial winners Bevan Berthold and Atang Makhakaneni. And after a little exhortation from Borum, next into the fray was Tom Smith in the neat little Mighty Mag. Next up were Brandon Harkus and Richard Rutz in the Galden Data Race Co, with a big crowd out early in the morning to watch the start of proceedings. Manfred Schroeder in the Pennzoil Orco, another of the single-seaters in the event, set off ahead of the Pajero of Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer after a fine time trial performance. The Woolrich-Schulthammer Pajero was 6th in the time trial ahead of the SALive.com Jeep Cherokee. The legendary Sorrel van der Merwe qualified the car, but the first stint of the Cherokee was taken by Arthur Abraham, with son Scott doing the pathfinding. Supervan was scheduled to take over the driving at the halfway mark, with the Jeep being followed by Nast LaRue and Henny Testega in one of the 2 Colts entered in the Sugarbelt 400. As anticipated, the route was wet and slippery in sections, with Johan and Frida van Jarsveld showing plenty of caution. The pair were caught up in a duel with Lawrence Duplessis, and while they sniped away at each other, there was an early hiccup for reigning production vehicle champions Arpi Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the factory Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser running in Class T. Reinecker and Houghton started 12th, and a little overshoot in the middle of a cane field cost the reigning South African champions a few seconds. It didn't take long for them, though, to get the Toyota pointed in the right direction. And while Reinecker and Houghton were charging through a sugarcane tunnel, front runners on the road were dealing with different terrain. with the water splash offering the choice of an aggressive approach or caution. Well, 2 of the aggressors there and 1 of the more cautious. And that cautious approach was also the route chosen by Shamir Variauer and Bucks Carolyn in the Cornbake Jimco. Carolyn is hugely experienced as a driver and navigator and obviously wasn't looking to tempt the racing gods. With positions on the road constantly changing, the Variauer-Carolyn car was now ahead of Bevan Bertolt and Atang Mahakhaneni in the Speedstick Raceco. Looking for their first win of the season, South African production vehicle champions Arpi Reiniker and Robin Houghton were building up a header's theme with the water splash no obstacle to the big Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. Reiniker and Houghton had moved ahead of the father and son team of Frans Chepek Sr. and Jr. with the Epson V Motors Raceco pair, the reigning South African special vehicle champions. Following the Chepeks were Yucky Gubert and Darnie Smith in the Jojo Tanks 4x4 VW Beetle, powered by a turbocharged Volvo engine. They were going along steadily enough, but behind them there was a queue of special vehicles that included the Dark Dog entry of John Weir Smith and Jeff Minute. Also going along steadily were Nars LaRue and Henny Duvsteger in the Mitsubishi Colt, with the pair at this stage running at the front of Class D. Right behind them were early Class E leaders Andrew and Chris Birkin, who were looking to improve their lot after going into the Pajero Sugarbelt 400 lying joint 3rd in the Class E Championship. After a disappointing time trial, former champions Hannah Strobler and Richard Leake started in 25th position and were scything through the field in the factory-backed Nissan hardbody. The versatile Strobler is back in harness after a decade in hiatus and has lost none of his skill. Strobler and Leake, another veteran off-roader, went into the Sugarbelt 400 lying 2nd in the Class T Championship, and while they were trucking down a faster section of the course, they were headed for drama. Stuck on the side of the road were Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer, who hit a tree stump, known as a lurker, and rolled the Mitsubishi Pajero. The Pajero miraculously landed on its wheels, but with the pair battling to extricate the car from thick mud, the current championship leaders were losing valuable time and dropped down the pecking order. They were still stranded when Cliff Viekelt in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser went past, and that meant another place to make up for the championship leaders. Further back, rally driver Enzo Kuhn and Francois Jourdan in the Colt Rodeo were also on a charge. Kuhn is one of the quickest drivers around, and he led the event from the first refuel until 40 kilometers from the finish on corrected time. He led a gaggle of cars that included the Class V Sandmaster of Dave Comfate and Jim Rushton, the Cliff Barker Vic Camphor Land Rover, and the Toyota Hilux of Jean-Pierre Joubert and Errol Hodgson in a race that was now charged with drama following that Woolrich-Schulthammer incident. At service points, there was the usual kaleidoscope of activity. For the lucky ones, service points were occupied only by refueling and grabbing a quick cold drink or sandwich. For the not-so-fortunate, there were running repairs to be made. And for those who were downright unlucky, the repairs were of major proportions and resulted in substantial time loss. It was all a little frenetic as service crews went into action to try and get their chargers back into the race as quickly as possible. It was hardly a super slick Grand Prix style pit situation, but even in off-road racing, a good pit stop can make the difference between winning and joining the also-rans. Back to the action, and belting along in the Cornbake Jimco were Shamir Variauer and Bucks Carolyn. The pair were also to have their turn at leading the Sugarbelt 400 on corrected time, with the battle in the special vehicle class now developing into a fight between Variauer and Carolyn, an inspired Manfred Schroeder in the single-seater, and Bevan Bertolt and Atang Mahakhaneni in the Speedstick Raceco, who were in hot pursuit of the Jimco. The Jimco, travelling at high speed over little yumps in the road, graphically illustrates just how effectively the sophisticated suspension system an off-road car operates. Try that on a Sunday afternoon in the family saloon, and the wife, kids, granny and the dog will be a little shook up. Repairs could also be a bit costly, but for an off-roader, it's part of a day at the office. For Apu Reiniger and Robin Houghton, their day at the office was turning into a profitable one. They were now leading the production vehicle category ahead of surprise packages, Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smalberger in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. The pair were thoroughly enjoying themselves, with Hannes Krobler and Richard Leek now third in the production vehicle category in the Nissan Hardbody. Racecam action is from the Nissan, and after starting the day in 25th place, Krobler and Leek could also have no complaints about their day at the office. While Krobler and Leek were wending their way through the sugarcane, there were some interesting little dices going on. One of them was between Robert Walk and son Gareth in the Super Pave Raceco, and Enzo Kuhn and Francois Jourdan in the Colt Rodeo. The chase was on for Kuhn and Jourdan, and that was exactly the same situation in which Neil Woolrich and Kenny Scholthammer found themselves in the Mitsubishi Pajero. The pair were still on a mission to salvage as many points as they could from the race. Woolrich and Scholthammer fairly zipped past Noel and Robin Quinn in the diesel Pajero, in which Woolrich won the Class E championship way back in 1996, and were now fourth in the production vehicle category. The special vehicle class was also heading for a dramatic finale, with Manfred Schroeder still providing heroics in the single-seater Pennzoil Orco. Going hell for leather behind Schroeder in an effort to catch the Orco were Bevan Berthold and Atang Machakaneni, with corrected race time now an all-important issue in the battle. Also involved in the three-way scrap up front were Class A championship leaders Shamir Variawa and Buck Carolyn, who were also steaming along in the Cornbake Jimco. Firmly in charge of the production vehicle category were Apu Reiniger and Robin Houghton in the Castle Toyota Land Cruiser. The reigning champions looked set for their first win of the season, and were now around 2 minutes clear of Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smalberger, who'd done a magnificent job in the privately entered Toyota Land Cruiser. The veteran pair of Hannes Krobler and Richard Leek were third in the production vehicle category. They were around 9 minutes behind Wiechelt and Smalberger, but at a 6-minute cushion on Woolrich and Scholthammer, who'd fought back in fine style. It was another consistent display from the experienced Krobler and Leek, with Nissan in for a second-class win via Hein Krobler and Charles Volmerans in Class D in a Nissan 4x4. And at the finish, a big crowd was waiting for the leading cars, and the first to appear were Bevan Berthold and Atang Machakaneni, who arrived with the Speedstick Raceco, sporting a flat right rear tyre. Flat tyre or not, a close-run affair saw Berthold and Machakaneni take overall honours on corrected time from a brave Manfred Schroeder in the Pennzoil Orco and the Shamir Variawa Bucks Carolyn Cornbake Jimca. Fourth were Mark Corbett and Juan Moore, with Brandon Harkes and Rachard Roots fifth.
I can only thank my navigator for slowing me down at the right times, and we got lucky. We got a puncher 4.3 k's out. I just went bang, and we just took a decision to drive home like this. It was a fantastic day.
It was necessary for us to finish in this position. Otherwise, we'd have made mistakes. It was a very tight route, lots of corners and very narrow. But with slowing down in certain sections and going faster than where you could, we did that, and we finished well. I told you we would finish, and we finished well.
After a lean start to the season by their standards, Apu Reiniger and Robin Houghton got their campaign back on track by winning the production vehicle category. It was not a clean run for the Toyota pair, with flat tyres and overheating problems giving them a few hassles along the way. In the end, the reigning champions were just 2 minutes ahead of Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smalberger. Hannes Krobler and Richard Leek were third ahead of championship leaders Neil Woolrich and Kenny Scholthammer, who fought a brave rearguard action after their big roll.
We're very happy to be here and very happy for this win. We had a bit of bad luck with the flat, and then the car started overheating, and we had to stop twice in this service to put some water in. But on the last 100 k's, we were running the car at the heat gauge was running about 150 degrees, and we decided we're going to send it, either we're going to break down or we're going to make it a win.
Still to come, bring an added sense of adventure to